Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another video. I wasn't sure if I was going to put another video out today, but I've done a bit of testing in the Bozja Southern Front. Now, a lot of people will probably want to know what exactly I found out. Some people probably already know this information, but this morning, basically, there was a hotfix that changed a lot about the game. Now, we looked at it very briefly, but I didn't have a lot of time this morning to really properly flesh things out and test everything. Well, basically, I've spent the majority of this evening testing that out. So, as you can see, we actually have some loathsome memories. Now, ultimately, that 12 there that I've acquired has been through Bozja Southern Front and not through Circus Tower. Now, I've not spent an incredible amount of time within the Bozja Southern Front. What I have essentially done there is 2 Lacus Latore runs, which is incredibly popularized now. A lot of people are queuing into that at the time of recording. Hopefully that doesn't drop off too badly as we go forward with the weeks, but it is completely queuable at the moment, at least, so that bottleneck has been averted, simply because if you do 3 runs of Lacus Latore, people are able to complete that loathsome memories stage, rather than doing 15 runs, for example, of Circus Tower. The other way then that I have found is really quite desirable over doing Circus Tower runs is actually to do critical engagements. Prior to the patch then, or hotfix, but it is basically a patch, prior to today, the biggest problem then with those loathsome memories is they're supposed to drop quite frequently from those from the critical engagements. So you do skirmishes, critical engagements pop up with dragons and bosses and other things, instanced things where you get pulled inside of a barrier. Those are critical engagements. The drop rate on the loathsome memories from those engagements does appear to be around the 60% or 70% sort of range. It's not 100% guaranteed like a run of Circus Tower, but for one critical engagement, especially of the lower area, you get one of those loathsome memories with about a 60 to 70% chance or thereabouts, alright? I've not got the official statistic, but it's after testing tonight, that's what it feels like. So ultimately, the best way to do the loathsome memory stage for change of arms for people doing multiple weapons or maybe the first time through is no longer through the Crystal Tower instances, but it's actually inside the actual critical engagements in Bozja Southern Front, which is, kind of like a big plus in my opinion. Yours might be very different, but it's up to you at the end of the day. You still have the Circus Tower runs at 100% chance, but this I feel is faster and much more rewarding because obviously you're getting lockboxes. They've increased the amount of stuff that you get from them, Bozja coins, stuff like that from those critical engagements, so that's a real boon. What they've done is allowed you to make that a complete choice, but obviously you're going to get other bits whilst you're inside Bozja, if that's, your Bozja coins, or if you're working towards lockboxes, or, obviously lockboxes equal gil eventually if you get something like the mount or glamour that you can sell, although the market's kind of swamped. It would be beneficial for you to do that instead necessarily than the outside thing. So it has changed the game quite considerably, and it has addressed that. One thing I have heard though, unfortunately, is the Rabanasta / Void Arc stage, so where you do the one-time only quest basically, where you have to do 18 runs of Void Arc or 18 runs of Royal City of Rabanasta, basically, or the Doman Fates, like the Far Eastern Fates, and then the Girabanian Fates. The actual Fates have been increased, apparently, in drop rate, but not significantly to the point where that is sadly more beneficial to do it in the Fates. That still remains a better 100% chance from Rabanasta and Void Arc, and the drop rate increase has been marginal at the very least, so that phase doesn't really have much of a buff from the Fates, so you're still better off doing your Void Arc and Rabanasta runs. Unfortunately, a lot of people are a little bit salty about that. They expected them to address that particularly, in particular, and boost those drop rates. Unfortunately, people are doing like 15 Fates in the peaks, for example, and not getting anything. It's obviously going to depend on your RNG. Even though there is an increase, it doesn't seem to be a large increase to the point where we would sacrifice just getting out of the way with Rabanasta and Void Arc, for example. So there's that. So those are the findings pretty much that we've got so far. So one change that wasn't made that I hoped would be in this patch would be to the harrowing, the tortured, and the sorrowful memories, the red, yellow, and blue memories for the For Want of a Memory step, which is actually the first step where you need to get 20 of each color to actually finish that. It turns out that the outside wasn't changed, and neither was the inside of Bozja either. There isn't actually anything about that. A lot of people are reporting that they're seeing higher numbers of these from skirmishes, but for as much as I can tell, it's just RNG, and they are not guaranteed from skirmishes 100%. And basically, you will still have to go and do Fates in Heavensward if you want to get those 100%, which is unfortunate. I would have hoped that they would have pushed Bozja a little bit further, but at least they didn't nerf the outside Fates. So at the end of the day, what they have done is for 90% of the stuff that you'll be rerunning, they have made Bozja Southern Front in this hotfix better to do than the external activities, which is actually a huge plus, and I believe that's how it should have been in the first place. Besides the point of whether we believe we should be in Bozja or not, and why there was a choice in the first place, at least then the best possible speed that you can do this for repeatable relics, or your first time through for the majority of stages, is inside Bozja itself. The only problem I will say is that by making the drop rate on loathsome memories so high from your critical engagements, the rest of the rewards aren't really enough to keep players like myself enticed enough to go into Lacus Latorii as often as they might imagine. The only other thing I will say is Lacus Latorii rewards over 80,000 metal upon completion. So that's the other incentive. So say for instance you're doing your 15 Delibram Reginae runs and you die a load of times and you want to restore your metal. A run of Lacus Latorii gives you over 80,000 metal back, which is easily going to be enough to restore you for any that you've lost in Delibram Reginae, I would imagine, you know, even from those wipes. So it is a very useful tool to have, but I don't necessarily think this is the be-all and end-all to solve those Lacus Latorii run problems. We might see a dip in that population going forward into the future. We might not. It's basically going to be, we'll have to see how it goes. But that's my report, that's my findings. Hopefully this was helpful. And my PSA to you basically is everything apart from the Rabanasta and Void Arc runs, which you still have to do basically for 100% chance, I would personally choose to come into Bozja, which has changed my mind completely on how I would approach this content. So there is a lot more people in there as a result of that. Anyway, thank you kindly for watching. Let me know what you think about these changes, about these chances to get things, if this was helpful, and I'll see you all much later. Goodbye.